Hello, Empower Nation. Welcome to Empower Her Money podcast. I am your host, Angela Duncan, speaker, best-selling author, serial entrepreneur, and we are talking all things money and business. Today's episode is sponsored by freemoneytipsbook.com. freemoneytipsbook.com. Head over there, get your free ebook, 7 unshakable tips to get you started on your financial journey. Today's episode, I am interviewing Maritza Garcia from Empire Academy, and we're talking about how she went from corporate America to being an entrepreneur and giving you tips about marketing your business. Hi, Maritza. Welcome to Empower Her Money podcast. How are you today?
I'm doing great.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate your time today. I would love to start out and just kind of tell a little bit about your story, your journey, and kind of how you got to what you're doing today.
Okay, sure. I'm from El Paso, Texas. It's a predominantly Hispanic city, probably like 80-90% Hispanic. I moved away for college and never looked back. I did what I was told, got good grades, went to a good school, got a good job, and I worked in corporate for a long time as an experienced designer, which just means making customer experiences better, whether it was in software or through, how they sell, basically. Now what I'm doing is I'm actually on a journey. So I started digital marketing, and now I'm shifting into my mission, right? My mission and my purpose. And so that's what I'm doing now.
Yeah, and you kind of breezed over that corporate job, but you worked for a pretty big company and got to travel, right? Tell us about that.
I worked for a couple of big companies and got to travel, actually. I worked for Autodesk. Autodesk took me to Europe. It took me to China. And then I worked with Consumer Cellular. I worked with Nike. I actually worked at Kellogg's. Traveled a lot with Kellogg's too. I don't know if you knew that. I was a packaging engineer at some point. But then my last corporate job was at Nike, and I got to go to Amsterdam. I got to go to China, New York City, Tampa. But yeah, that was a pretty amazing job.
Yeah. So what did you kind of learn from traveling so much? Because you got to see so many different countries and cultures and marketing from all different perspectives. Like, what are some things that you took away from those previous jobs?
I took away probably that there are a lot of similarities, right? The things that make people tick are still all the same, right? People still want comfort, people still want status, people still want community. Like the things that drive people are still the same, right? And if you get to the kind of that core, then you can understand everybody, really.
So marketing is all over, right? So everybody looks for marketing for their companies, no matter where they're selling their products.
Yeah, and like I said, if you look at there's a list of like 5 core things. I'm blanking right now. You'll have to come to Empower Her Money to get that list. But there's a list of like 5 core things that make people a tick. I'll give you a couple of them. One of them is status. Another one is community, like I was saying, right? That are like any company that markets, right? For example, Nike's pitching like community in a way, but also status, right? Like you are an athlete if you wear Nike. You're someone that's like higher level. So all this to say, like every company, if they touch on those points and they identify their target market and how they can touch on those points, like, they'll hit the jackpot.
Okay. So now you're Empire Academy, right? That's the current company.
Right.
What is your vision, or what are you guys working on now from a business perspective?
So my vision with the Empire Academy is to teach all of the things that you weren't taught in college. Basically, it's the best way I can put it. Sales, marketing, money, leadership, like to teach you all of the things that you need to be successful, whether you're an entrepreneur, business owner, all the things that you need to be successful that weren't taught in college. Or, hey, maybe you don't need to go to college. Maybe you just come to the Empire Academy. And the goal is to help people build generational wealth.
Awesome. Yeah. Do you give like a plaque, like, a diploma at the end of the day when we successfully complete the program.
That's a good, yeah, that's a good idea. Maybe we'll have different levels of certification. I like that.
Yeah, because when I finished college, I actually never did like the walking, receiving the diploma. I just like, oh, that's just not worth my time or whatever. But I've always thought I want to go back for that experience. So just a thought there. You mentioned two different terms, and I think I don't hear them very often, but the intrapreneur versus the entrepreneur. So what is the difference between those two, and kind of why they obviously have two different languages for them?
Yeah, I think I have the perspective of both, right? So I was working at Nike, and my goal ultimately was, or at all the companies I worked, right? Your goal is always to move up, right? Most people, that's what they want. And my goal at these companies was to make them money, make them more money, whether it was by increasing conversions, increasing retention, increasing whatever it was, right? The goal was to make them more money by focusing on what the customer wants. And so that's intrapreneurs moving inside the company. When I decided to be an entrepreneur, I knew that that was my focus again, is to make help companies make money. So that's the focus that I've had for the past 3-4 years. But an entrepreneur is somebody that finds a problem and solves it, right? And starts either by themselves, entrepreneur, and then eventually, hopefully, becomes a business owner.
Gotcha. And as an entrepreneur, what do you think are some of the biggest challenges that maybe when people think, oh, I'm going to run my own business, I'm going to go out there, I'm going to do this. What are some challenges you feel like maybe they don't know about getting into that perhaps the academy is going to help teach them?
I think the first thing is like going at it alone is hard. Like that's where I started. I'll say the Empire Academy is a little bit of a selfish, it's kind of started as a little bit of a selfish, like I just want more people around me that like think the same, that want the same. Because when you become an entrepreneur, for a lot of us, your family thinks you're crazy, right? Why not just have a stable job, or why are you working so many hours? There's like kind of that meme of you quit your 9 to 5 and now you work 14 hours a day. You know what I mean? So it's like the community and I forgot your question.
Um, I know I was going off, and I was going to go totally off tangent on the next one because I forgot it too. But when you said crazy, I think there's 4 stages of an entrepreneur when it comes to family. First, your family thinks you're crazy. Like, why are you leaving your stable job? You shouldn't be doing this. And then once you start to have success, they're like, oh, well, you're just lucky because, this, or this happened. And then the third stage is they start to get curious and ask you about your business. And then the fourth stage is now they're saying, oh, I know Maritza. She's like my cousin or whatever, because, you've become very successful. So when you said crazy like that, I had heard that from one of my mentors talking about the different stages. But I think my question was more so like, what do you guys teach that maybe an entrepreneur doesn't know they're getting into when they go to be, on their own?
Yeah, so I think the first thing is community, right? The second thing is sales. Like sales, at the end of the day, if you don't make sales, your business is not going to work. So how to handle objections, how to handle things that people become an entrepreneur because they're good at something, right? The baker opens a bakery because they love to bake, or they're good at baking, or someone tasted their cake and they said, wow, you should open a bakery, right? But then they don't know how to like sell that thing, right? They've given it to their friends and family, but now they don't know how to sell the thing. And then marketing's a big one, right? Your friends and family know that you're a great baker, but nobody else does, right? And we always say better known beats best product. McDonald's definitely not the best hamburger, but everybody knows about McDonald's. So marketing is super, super important. And then I would say leadership and scale, right? Leadership, you become an entrepreneur, but maybe you haven't led people, or you haven't led people in your company. And there's an entrepreneur dilemma of I love this thing, this is my baby, why doesn't anybody else work as hard as me, right? Well, it's not their baby, but how can you lead them on your vision and your goals, and like your vision of how you want to make an impact to inspire them to maybe work 50% of as hard as you work, because nobody's ever going to work as hard on a business as the owner, of course. And then scale, right? How do you operationalize these things? How do you start to think, okay, 10x, right? It's easier to think in 10x and then bring down the structure as opposed to like just getting that next paycheck. So thinking bigger and thinking ahead.
Yeah, and oftentimes we think bigger and we accomplish the goal quicker than we think we could accomplish it because we are thinking bigger, and putting that action plan in place. And I loved how you differentiated between sales and marketing, because I think sometimes people think it's the same thing. But one is, like telling your story, and one is, getting the clients in the door. It's completely different avenues. And it really does take different skill sets. Like, I'm an operations person. I can put events together, I can put systems together, but I am not the greatest at telling people how to get to what it is that I'm trying to selling. So what are some tips that maybe you can give a business owner, take the bakery, for example, if they're looking to grow their client base? Like, what do you tell people they should be focusing on so that they can generate sales and marketing?
So people do business with people they like, know, and trust, right? So telling now more than ever, people are starting to shy away a little bit from the Walmarts and the Sears and the Kmarts. People want to buy from people they know, right? Or from a face. There's a reason why Coca-Cola, like Pepsi, they always put a celebrity in front of the brand because people want to buy from people. So they want to see themselves in that product. So as much as pretty as your cakes are and as beautiful as they might be, telling your story about why you opened the bakery, about how you used to cook with your grandmother and that's where you learned the love of baking, like that's going to make people walk in the door more than a beautiful cake. And especially like if you put your cake next to somebody else's, even though your cake is more beautiful or even though their cake is more beautiful, say they're going to want to do business with you and come into your bakery because they associate like, oh yeah, I used to love to cook with my grandmother too, right? So telling the story of why you love what you're doing or why you created what you're doing is going to help bring traffic through the door.
Yeah, I like that. So like if you have an Instagram or a Facebook account, not just showing the product, but giving the story behind it and kind of tying in with that, like that heart piece of it, so that when someone buys your cake, they're like, oh, in this bakery, and then they want to tell your story because you've told your story, right? So I like that. I like that a lot. What's next for you with Empire Academy? What do you feel like you're gonna go towards in the future? Maybe some aspirations or goals that you've set for yourself in the company?
We just want to create more impact. We want more people in, and our next big goal is to host an event. So I'm looking at creating an event that's kind of like a boot camp slash like inspirational, right? So for those of you that are 10Xers, a cross between like a boot camp and a growth con, where you have big speakers that are inspiring you, but you also have a notebook that you walk away with where you have actionable items to go and scale whatever it is you want to scale, whether it's yourself or your business or move up the corporate ladder.
That's great too, because I'm a master at going to networking events. I need to be a little bit more purposeful when I'm there. So that would be something that I think would be a great item for people to learn too, is, how do you incorporate that networking piece into your business? But I too love going to workshops. I want to like take notes. I want to come back with an action item. I want to put it into place. Networking is great at times, but also to grow the business, it's like I need ideas, right? So I love that aspect that you're talking about, doing the boot camp with the speakers that are going to be inspirational, but also real information that you're going to be able to take with you and put into your business so that you can grow, right?
Yeah, and I have this dream of having like little Empire Academy chapters throughout the country too, because going to an event is great, but then we meet daily. So we meet daily, we have wins, we share a little bit, we do some cardon you or share, whatever was learned in that workshop, whatever workshop I went to that weekend, takeaways. And then a lot of times we'll role play. It depends on the day, but my idea is to also build these little like chapters and communities, because it's great going to the event, but then you go home and you're like, now what? or again, like community and being around, they say you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. But if you don't have anybody to spend time with that's also an entrepreneur and going through the same things, then it starts to become really hard and discouraging. So having that community aspect of like-minded people, I think, is really important.
Yeah, yeah. And you touched on that too. I mean, I'm in Miami, so it's very easy to go to Cardone events. But when people fly in and they meet us and then they leave and go home, like I'm sad that they leave. But at the same time, it's like if they haven't connected with someone who's in their area, then they may not even implement anything that they've learned while we were here, right?
Exactly. Yep. I don't know if you know this. I moved here to go to Cardone events.
Oh, really? From Texas?
Actually, I was living abroad. I was living in Mexico. So my dream, that's why I became an entrepreneur. I had the job at Nike and COVID hit. Everybody started moving away from Portland, working remote, right? And I asked if I could move to Mexico. They gave me permission. And then I was like, I'm not going back. This is the life. And so I was like living my dream, living abroad. And then I discovered the Grant Cardone, the 10X life, basically. I bought a bunch of his workshops and I was like, well, I guess I have to move back. I'm going to sacrifice the dream of living in Mexico to scale my business.
Wow, that's inspirational too. I hope to go the other route, like build a business enough to where it's remote so that I can go live, somewhere else for 6 months. I don't know about Mexico. I don't speak Spanish, so I might not do so well there.
My boyfriend doesn't speak Spanish either. He was just fine.
Yeah, awesome. Sorry. So one more piece of advice. What else could you give to our business owners that are listening? Perhaps it is a money podcast. So if you can incorporate something as far as like, expenses or what you teach your entrepreneurs about money when they do come through the academy.
I would say one of the things we talked about the other day is like leverage. That's one of the first things that I use, leverage, right? And then quantifying your time. For example, we talked about like how many of you guys wait in line at Costco or Sam's to save, 10 or 15 cents on gas. Like, have you ever thought about how much money you're actually saving? Are you saving $5 and you're waiting there for an hour? Like, your time is worth more than $5 an hour, right? So why are you doing that? And like, and then going back to leverage, like if you're doing any job, whether it's like creating social media posts, graphic designs, or if you're, I don't know, washing your car and your time is worth more than that, go pay someone to do it and go do something that like inspires you. Go spend time with your family instead, right? Leverage. That's ultimately what got me to the next level, is leveraging my time and knowing what my time is worth.
I like that. So you just validated, I don't like cooking and it takes a lot of time. So it's much easier to do Uber Eats on my app and it gets delivered to my house. So I'm just going to keep doing that.
That's one of the things I miss about Mexico the most, is like we at one point we went and bought all these groceries and we cooked and we're like, Mike, what are we doing? Like, we can go right down the street and go out to eat for like $3 and get like a 3-course meal. So yeah, I also miss not doing laundry. I used to get all my laundry done. It's not as easy here. It was very easy in Mexico to just go around the corner and get the laundry done or have someone come over and do it. But yeah.
Yeah, I grew up in San Diego, so Mexican food is still my favorite. It's definitely not the same in Florida. I got to go back to Cali in order to get like real Mexican food.
Yeah, that doesn't exist very much. I notice like even when I go to Mexican restaurants, it's like Cuban food or
right.
I don't know, some sort of Caribbean food. I'm like, this is not Mexican.
Not authentic. Okay, so change of questions for you. If you could pick a superpower, what would it be and why would you choose it?
I would pick mind reading, because then I could definitely get my way with anything I want. But I'd want to be able to turn it off. I'd want to be able to turn it off. I wouldn't want to be like what's that movie?
Oh, I know
Yeah.
you're with Mel Gibson and he
Mel
hears,
Gibson, yes,
yeah,
where he hears
no.
everything and can't. I need to be able to turn it off.
Yeah, that would drive me crazy. I mean, it would be fun like walking into a bar and just like listening to people's random thoughts for a little bit, but yeah, please turn it off so that I don't hear it all the time.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate your time today, Maritza. If our audience wants to get in touch with you, learn more about Empire Academy or anything else that you have going on, what's the best way to reach you?
Instagram for sure, Maritza.Garcia, and then 2 underscores, but you should find me with just Maritza.Garcia. Instagram and Empire Academy is all over that.
Yeah, thank you. That wraps up another episode of Empower Her Money podcast. I am your host, Angela Duncan. Just a reminder that whatever you have learned today, take action, because it's not just about listening about the information, but taking action. And of course, if you've got questions, reach out to Maritza directly, because she's going to be more than happy to answer your questions as well.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Empower Her Money podcast. Make sure you leave me a 5-star review, share this podcast, subscribe, and share the message.